Danger Dolan. From malevolent creatures beneath certain zones to characters and storylines that were never wrapped up, we count 10 of the biggest mysteries plaguing World of Warcraft to this day. Number 10. Lulz asks, what did the dwarves find at Baal Medan? What could it be, and what are your thoughts? So this is a dwarven base in Southern Barrens, should be familiar to anyone who leveled up a Horde tune vanilla through Wrath. Following the release of Cataclysm, a Baal Dun excavator stands before the entrance cave, and when talked to as an Alliance player, he says, "Turn away. Before the Cataclysm hit, we found something. We dug something up that should have stayed buried. Pray to whatever you believe in that the landslide was enough to keep it down." Now, prior to Cataclysm, a gem called Tear of the Moons had been dug up in the area and driven a dwarf insane. Meanwhile, over at the Baal Dun dig site in Mulgore, the dwarves there had all been killed by digging too deep and unleashing earth spirits. So the question is, what's under Baal Medan and will it stay buried? Like the Mulgore dig site, it could be the earth spirits, but it could also have something to do with the old gods which are buried beneath Azeroth. Number 9. So there is an area to the west of Tirisfal Glades called the Whispering Forests, in which you'll find some diseased animals and a mysterious fairy circle occasionally surrounded by fey-drunk darters. When they arrive, they channel some light beams into the center and play a haunting song in the background of the WoW client. There have been a lot of lore theories about what might lie underneath this fairy circle in Tirisfal Glades, and when WoW developers were asked what we'll find, they merely mentioned something incredibly unsettling and sinister. Since it may or may not have connections to the fabled Emerald Dream and its rumored expansion, it is possible we might find out what's under there given time. Number 8. Female Ogres. We have a comment from Fireline. I'm not sure we would really want to see them, but given how Ogres have been brought up in the past as a playable race, I am curious. There have been no models or released concept art for them either. So as Fireline mentions, Ogres have been a long talked about playable race, almost making the cut in place of goblins for the launch of Cataclysm. Female ogres, on the other hand, barely even exist. They currently don't appear in-game, and those mentioned in the novels and stories can be counted on one hand. But one clue has been a jewel crafting daily quest revealing the existence of Ogrezonia, an island inhabited by giant female ogres out in the South Seas. But considering the age of the game, it's still odd that we haven't seen them yet, not even vaguely. Number 7. The Snake Undergun Drac. Originally, Wrath of the Lich King was set to feature both a raid in Utgard Fortress and a raid in Gundrak, with item models for both data mined early in the expansion's life. In the Gundrak dungeon, you see a curious giant snake tail leading through a huge chasm inside the instance, apparently to tease the coming raid, which sadly never materialized. Instead, we're left with the question, what creature does this snake tail belong to? There haven't been any solid clues both in-game or in terms of lore. But when the devs were asked, they merely claimed they just add these things to be fleshed out later, but they likely never got around to this one. Of course, since we know of at least one more troll raid on Zandalar, it is possible we might find out more about this snake. Number 6. Alleria and Turalyon. Fireline once again has a comment. This couple has been off the radar since the second Warcraft game, supposedly on Outland. In TBC we have met some of their comrades, but haven't found any trace left by them. Some Alliance gear was named after them in previous expansions, and that's about it. So in the middle of Cataclysm we find a curious tip message that randomly tells us nobody has seen Alleria and Turalyon in years. Alleria is the older sister to Dark Lady Sylvanas, and Turalyon is her husband, a paladin of Stormwind, both of them lost on Draenor when the Dark Portal was closed during the original Warcraft games. It is rumoured Blizzard devs originally intended to have them feature in Warlords of Draenor, but for whatever reason they were left out and are still missing to this day. If we do find them, they'll likely appear in a Burning Legion expansion set on their homeworld of Ogres, but it is strange that it's been so long since the message first appeared in the game, and we just haven't seen them. Number 5. Neptulon, one of the 4 elemental lords in WoW, alongside Ragnaros, Therazane, and Alakir, who appeared during Cataclysm for a quest chain in Vashir, and also in the 5-man Throne of the Tides dungeon. It's at the very end of Throne of the Tides that we see Neptulon stolen away by Ozumat, Fiend of the Dark Below, only for him to make a reappearance in the unreleased Cataclysm raid Abyssal Maw. However, since Abyssal Maw was scrapped in favour of Firelands, this storyline was never completed, and the fate of Neptulon and Ozumat remains a mystery. We all assumed the rumored Dark Below expansion would give us some closure, but that turned out to be an elaborate hoax. There is some hope though. The inevitable South Seas expansion could be the perfect excuse to bring him back and finally tie up his story. Number 4. Fragments of Frostmourne, the famous rune blade carried by Arthas, also known as the Lich King, a sword built to kill people and steal their souls. At the end of Wrath of the Lich King, we see Frostmourne shattered into pieces and taken away. But by who? We just don't know yet. And that's the mystery. At BlizzCon 2011, we find out the shards of Frostmourne were taken away by someone smart and put somewhere safe, until the day comes when someone decides to reforge it. There are a few possibilities, such as Sylvanas taking them to use as arrowhead shards, or Tyrion and the Argent Crusade locking them up, or maybe Jaina kept them as a memento. It's certainly fertile soil for a future expansion, maybe the return of the Lich King starring Bolvar 4 Dragon and the rebuilt Frostmourne. Number 3. Thumbosaurus Rex has a comment. Is Illidan's Stormrage really dead, or is he just locked away somewhere? Alright, so Illidan is one of the more popular characters from Warcraft, the major character in Warcraft 3 and the primary antagonist in the Burning Crusade, with a brief appearance during the Well of Eternity 5-man dungeon during Cataclysm. But on 2 separate occasions, we've heard Chris Metzen, the senior vice president on story and franchise development at Blizzard, claim Illidan will be resurrected and brought back into the game, hopefully as a redemption story. But it's been 4 years since he said that and nothing has happened. Illidan is still dead, and Wall of Draenor would have been the perfect time to do that, but as far as we know, that's not happening. We do know that he will make a return eventually, with hints about a new Well of Eternity below the Black Temple, but the mystery is, when is he coming back, and how? Number 2. Soren255 has a comment. What happened to Tyr? He was missing when players were on the grand tour of Watchers' temples in Northrend, and his temple was just as empty as the other Watchers. But we go into Ulduar, and he's the only Watcher nowhere to be found, with the theory that he mutated into General Vizax was officially deconfirmed by Blizzard though. Then there's the human city of Tyr's Hand, the forest of Tirisfal, and Council Guardian of Tirisfal, mentioned in The Last Guardian that it wasn't named for the forest but for something else. And the Knights of the Silver Hand, Tyr had a silver hand. He clearly has some connections to humans. So Tyr is one of the Watchers of Azeroth, left behind by the Titans/gods to watch over the world in their place. And when the other Watchers were driven mad at the events of Ulduar, Tyr was off doing his own thing. We see a flashback in the novel Dawn of the Aspects that Tyr had his hand bitten off by a giant proto-dragon, and Tyr came back to teach humans about the light, which formed Knights of the Silver Hand, silver referencing Tyr's replacement hand, and the Scarlet Crusade. The mystery is, where did Tyr go, and what is he doing now? He didn't come back to help the other Watchers at Ulduar, yet we know he's still alive and active. It's another story thread for possibly an Old God expansion or something along those lines. Number 1. What is the zone above Eastern Plague Lands? It's known as Northern Lordaeron, an inaccessible zone that could be part of the fallen kingdom of Lordaeron or Quel'Thalas. During the Cataclysm World revamp, all zones in Azeroth were given geography and purpose. All except Northern Lordaeron, which remains on the map but can't be clicked and is entirely blocked off by invisible walls. Some believe the entire zone to be Stratholme, since the entrance leads directly into Northern Lordaeron, but the area is simply too big and vast to accommodate one city, and there have been lore mentions in-game of a North of Lordaeron area. Whether we're ever going to see this zone accessible in the game is up for debate, the major possibility being a rebuilt Stratholme port city serving for a water-based expansion. That is it for this countdown. Have a good one!